But as I mentioned, the ratings, people have taken me to task on Twitter. Well, Cornette, you haven't said anything past couple weeks. The ratings down, even with your boy Punk and Danielson. Well, yeah, I kind of have. I said they're making this less special. And so now, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, they've gone again from 1.2 million back down to 800-something thousand. And it wasn't just the holiday weekend, because this week with the Atlanta street fight and the Fire Marshal Bill finish was lower than last week. And they put themselves in a position where once that something works, be it somebody on television or, advertise this or whatever, they hot shot a couple more weeks to get all they can get out of it. And then they basically not demean it, but they take the fucking new and the fresh and the whatever off, and they go back to 800-something thousand. We've been saying this for months. It's a pattern. New talent, big name, hot shot deal, 1.2, and then they drop back down because you can't hot shot every week and you can't have a surprise debut every week. And if they had held back just a little restraint, hold it back so Punk only wrestles on TV once every 3 weeks and talks the other 2. You going to be upset at hearing a Punk promo? No. Then it's still a little more special or whatever, but instead they use it up and they're back where they started from. And who's the next one? It's going to get them back to 1.2 million. Because it's usually not matches. It's usually debuts of people that are brand new in the company. Go ahead.
You know what they could learn from WWE? Because AEW, it seems like every week their big thing is, here are a bunch of things that Tony Khan signed for next week, and they'll throw out, like, in quick succession with, the image, 4 or 5 matches, maybe a promo or 2, and that's next week's show. With WWE, they have matches, sometimes, not modern WWE, when Vince was coherent. Let's say the late 90s. There were a bunch of matches on that show. Maybe you knew some of them in advance, but it was really about, Steve Austin will be here. What will he say? They pounded it throughout the whole show. AEW doesn't have that. AEW is a segment-by-segment show. The Punk segments are great. The Danielson segments are great. Even if you like or don't like any of the other segments, they don't necessarily have anything to do with anything else on the show, and you won't have a fucking Jim Ross or someone saying, CM Punk tonight will be here. It's like things are mentioned, and then they just move on with the show. Well, and there's nothing that gets that extra emphasis, I don't think.
You brought that up, and when Vince was coherent, the main event, not the main event, but the main story of the Raw show had a thread running through it. And it involved the main star talent, the Austins, the Rocks, the Triple H's, the Foleys, the Takers, the whatever the fuck, right? And if it was a live interview at the start, people got together, something happens, a match was made or whatever. It didn't just drop off the face of the earth until the last segment when you had the match. You went and revisited it and refreshed it in people's minds with a interview with somebody running to somebody backstage, or something happens. Vince used to actually sit down, and when he was looking at the format in the writing meetings, he said, well, great, this segment's great, but we need to freshen up whatever the issue was. We did it in seg 1. The match is in seg 8 and 9. We need something in seg 4 and something in seg 6, pal, blah, blah, blah. And you would make sure that people were reminded about it. Some other development took place, something pertinent was said, and so it ran through the program. There was a common thread. And like you said, some segments are good, some segments are awful, some segments are just there, but they stand alone in the body of the program. And I think it's because Tony Khan, as the Booker of the Year, let's face it, he's writing shit down that he would get a tickle out of seeing, and then he's giving it to the talent, and then they're doing what they can do to make it palatable. That's why the talented guys, their segments are great, and the fucking outlaw goofs, their segments are shit because they don't know any better. And they're not having somebody explain to them not just who they're supposed to be wrestling or who's supposed to win or what they're supposed to say, but how and how long and why and etc. So that's what you've got there with the segment by segment thing, and some things stand alone, and some things stand on their own merits, and some fall on their own merits. But anyway, ratings. Give me the last 5 weeks of ratings.
Okay, and in case you wanted, I also have Rampage here, but for Dynamite, the last 5 weeks, so that takes us to October 27th, which was the return to Wednesday, for the record. 941,000. November 3rd, 878,000. November 10th, 913,000. November 17th, 984,000. November 24th, 898,000. And finally, December 1st, 861,000.
It's within the same range, but it's trending down again because there's nobody new. They're not reacting in large numbers, the viewers, to what's presented on the show, and it's who's presented on the show. And it skews heavily if they're new and they've just arrived and made a surprise debut, and then it's, okay, now they either see them every week now and they're convinced they're going to see them every week, so it's not special, you don't have to catch everything, or in some cases, like poor Adam Cole, well, we've seen him now, we ain't anxious to see any more. Rampage is a whole nother kettle of fish because they've just thrown that show in the tank. They've made that, and we've been talking about this for several weeks. They know people will watch it because 1.2 million people watched it for Punk to make his debut. And then they gave him a bunch of the Hardy Family Office and the Puddin' Gang and goofy matches that made no sense and the girls' tournament. And last week, I think they were down to 400 and something thousand, which is the lowest ever.
That's what I was going to say. August 20th, the second episode, CM Punk's debut. The first episode the week before did 740,000. Week 2 did 1.129 million for CM Punk. The week after, 722. November 26th, last week's Rampage, 431,000.
And that was the Friday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Which, and I've been in the wrestling business and the TV business for a long time, and that's Thanksgiving weekend is not good for your viewership. But it didn't knock half of the entire fucking audience off. That's just people going, well, they've just fucking shit the bed on this show.
It's Friday night at 10 p.m. You have to give people a reason to watch it live. And then if they're not going to watch it live, you have to give them a reason to DVR it. And when Punk's on, you have a reason. Although there have been weeks that Punk was on for a 10-second promo. And quite frankly, you probably shouldn't waste Punk on the fucking Friday night 10 p.m. show.
Well, but now,
shouldn't waste Punk there. We shouldn't waste MJF there. Shouldn't waste Bryan Danielson there.
No. Because then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't waste your stars on a show because nobody's watching the show, then nobody's ever going to watch the show. People will watch the show. They've proved it. They just won't watch the show unless there's something on they want to see. I'd work on putting some more things on there they want to fucking see. And it doesn't have to be, again, Bryan Danielson and CM Punk wrestling jobbers. And it doesn't have to be all main events. But it could certainly be more interesting personalities interacting with a higher level of talent there to put them over, and let the guys who are wordsmiths do their promos and come up with a way to magazine format or package the week in AEW with a lot of exciting highlights and some fresh comments. So you get a fucking 8 or 10 minute segment in there that brings people up to date on everything and moves quickly and has star power in it. It just doesn't mean put all the guys you don't have time for on Wednesday that nobody gives a shit about on the program. Or you can just give up.
They got to do something.
What they've done.
They got to do something because pretty soon Rampage's ratings are going to match Roads to the Top.
Maybe they could do a cross promotion. Rampage and Ricky Rhodes.
That would be interesting if they could take an outside show like Roads to the Top and do a cross promotion, maybe get that Cody Rhodes character on the wrestling show. That might be interesting.
Well, I'll guarantee you, before we move on here, I know one thing that they can do to get viewers. They probably set their all-time viewing record. Have another street fight and set Brandy on fire. They can sell VHS tapes of that.
You'd have to announce that in advance to really capitalize on the desires of the fans.
That would be the advertising for a month. I don't even know if I'd do it on free TV. I might make it pay-per-view. We are going to set Brandy Rhodes on fire. People would be fighting to get tickets. Anyway, what are they fighting to listen to over on your program this week, on your various programs at the Arcadian Vanguard Network?
For the record, the idea of lighting Brandy Rhodes on fire was Jim Cornette's whenever any of you start sending this around to the bootleg sites. It wasn't mine. I don't want to light anyone on fire. Well, actually, there are a few people I'd like to light on fire, but not Brandy Rhodes. I don't have any personal
I didn't say I'd take great joy in it. I just said it'd be good for business.
You know, there's so many people that are like, live and let live, or, oh, you can never wish death on... I'm like, no, there are people that need to die. There are people that need to go. This whole fucking lovey-dovey, oh, don't hate someone or be angry, never wish death. No, there are people that need to go, and they need to go bad.
Yeah.
But Brandy Rhodes is not on that list for me. I want more Brandy, because I find it hysterical. And find out what else is happening that's hysterical on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Of course, get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes. The latest episode of Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdrin and Barry is out right now at bowdrinpod.com. Of course, available wherever you find, I just kicked something, wherever you find your favorite podcast.
Hopefully it wasn't the bucket.
It wasn't a bucket. It was this little thing I have over here, but whatever. I just kicked it again.
I've heard about your little thing, and I don't think you ought to be kicking it.
I wouldn't be kicking it if it was that little. But anyway, want to mention the latest Patreon episode for patrons of Breaking Kayfabe with Bowdrin and Barry at patreon.com/Bowdrin and Barry. Up right now, Unsolved Mysteries, where Bowdrin and Barry look at unsolved mysteries, as well as the grossest foods of all time. Check it out today. Patreon.com/Bowdrin and Barry. Also want to make mention of the Mid-Atlantic Championship podcast. So many of you have been enjoying it with Mike Sempervive and Roman Gomez. Check it out today at midatlanticpod.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, the Mothership! Go through the archives today at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Listen to the old episodes and hear who I've lit on fire in the past, and try to figure out who's going to be next. The 605 Superpodcast, the Mothership!
Yeah, you caught me unawares.
Unawares.